Hello CSS, and thanks for joining me. I'm here to present what you need to know about how we are handling COVID at CSS and what that means if you are close contact here at school or if you do become infected with COVID-19. I will go through the entrance protocols, go over testing kit protocols, and what to do if you or someone at CSS tests positive for COVID-19. Please note that the majority of these protocols are put forth by the New York City Department of Education and are not constructed by the CSS administration or by the CSS COVID response team. Determining when your student should or should not come to school is really important to keep our community safe. The main determinant for figuring out if a student should be attending school is going through the health screening questionnaire. This questionnaire should be done on the student's phone, or they can obtain a hard copy and bring it in. It is extremely important to read through each question and determine which category box that you fit in before moving to the next one. This will help us determine whether you should be at school or not. Please note that this is considered a legal document, and if there is any falsified information or it is inaccurate, you will be held responsible. All DOE students, again, must complete this health screening questionnaire before entering the building. It is really important for students and families to carefully read the health screening questionnaire. In this section, I'm going to go through the questions and try to highlight the key parts of these options so that you can make the best determination when you are filling out the health questionnaire. First question is, have you experienced any symptoms of COVID-19, including a fever of 100 degrees Fahrenheit or greater, a new cough, sore throat, loss of taste or smell, or shortness of breath that started in the past 10 days? Key word here is in the past 10 days. If your answer is no, you can easily just go to the next question. If your answer is yes, you must carefully read the next three options to figure out which category you fall in. At this point, you may pause the video and read through the three yes options. Please keep in mind that students who test positive for COVID-19 must quarantine for 10 days. There is no exception. It is 10 days, regardless of what other advice is given out. The DOE policy is that students must quarantine for 10 days and then can return on the 11th day, provided that they are showing no symptoms. Again, reading through these choices would help make that determination. If you are a faculty member, you can quarantine for 5 days and return on the 6th day, provided that you are not showing symptoms, again, which can be made by reading through this first question. For this question, again, if you check yes and you are not in any of the categories above in the question, then no further screening is needed and the individual may not enter the building. The second question states that in the past 10 days, have you gotten a positive result from a COVID-19 diagnostic test? Please note that 10 days is measured from the day you were tested and not from the day when you got the test result. If your answer is no, go to the next question. If your answer is yes, you must read through the other two choices. At this point, you may pause the video to go ahead and do that. If you notice the middle yes, the second one pertains only to school-based staff members, not to students. Therefore, if a student does say yes to this question, there is no further screening needed and the individual may not enter the building. Again, it is around the regulations from DOE that students who test positive for COVID-19 must quarantine for 10 days and then may return on the 11th day. The last question states that in the past 10 days, were you in close contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19? Pause the video now to read your answer choices. I'm now going to go through all of the choices to help try to further explain what they mean. So first choice, no, the individual may enter the building. If you answer yes, I was exposed at school and I am taking the COVID-19 diagnostic tests as directed by my school and have not received a positive result on these tests. If I test positive, I will begin isolation and the individual may enter the building. Students who are considered close contacts at school will receive a COVID-19 diagnostic test. They are to take it the day they receive it, and they should do that at home, not in the school building. Again, they should do it at home. They will go through the school day. They can go through their after school activities, again, if they're a close contact, and then when they go home, they will take the test. If the student tests positive, they are to upload their results, and then they will need to begin isolation. I will talk about this a little bit more when we talk about testing kits. The third choice, yes, I was exposed at school, but I have not received a home testing kit. Please contact your school to ensure you receive a home test kit today. The individual may enter the building. We are trying our best to get all the home test kits out to all the individuals who are considered close contacts. If we make a mistake or or you don't get one for whatever reason, please just let the COVID team know. That's me, Dean Young. You can go to Miss Ramos, AP Nelson, Miss Bosch, or Principal Nightingale. Choice 4, yes, and I am not fully vaccinated, returning from quarantine from an exposure outside of school on day 8 with proof of a negative diagnostic COVID-19 test performed on day 5 or later. The individual may enter the building. This means that the student is not fully vaccinated, but they were exposed to someone outside of school who tested positive for COVID. They can come back to school on day 8, provided that they give the school us proof of a negative diagnostic COVID-19 test performed on day 5 of their quarantine or later. Again, it must be proof of a negative diagnostic COVID test on day 5 of the quarantine or later, and it must be done by a medical professional. It cannot be an at-home test. Option 5, yes, I was exposed outside of school, but I am considered fully vaccinated. The individual may enter the building. So if you are exposed outside of school, whether it was a family member, a family friend, but you're vaccinated, you may return to school and enter the building. The last option, yes, and I was exposed outside of school, again by a family or friend, but you are not fully vaccinated, then the individual may not enter the building. If the student gets the clearance to enter the school and facility, that looks like the picture here on the right, then you are expected to be in school. No accommodations will be made if you pass the health screener and then choose not to come to school. That means you will not be privy to the asynchronous work online, you will not get the office hours, and this will not count as an excused absence. The only exception that will be made will be if a parent or a family decide to get the student tested because they have been exposed or are showing symptoms. Please note that if they do still pass the health screener and then they're waiting for those results, those days will not be counted as excused absences. Again, this is the policy of the DOE. In this next section, I will go through the COVID testing protocols. This section is extremely pertinent to those who have received COVID testing antigen home tests. So who should get tested? Students who are showing COVID-19 symptoms as identified in the health screener, and individuals who are identified as close contacts to students who were identified as being positive for COVID-19. In this latter case, CSS will provide a take-home test that looks something like this. Please note that we get them from the DOE and there may be a change in brand, but we will do our best to provide them. So at-home test kits look like the picture on the right. Sometimes DOE sends other versions of the test kit, so please be aware that they may get something that looks a little different, but that they can still be used. These are intended for students in classes where a positive case is identified. They're also used for students who are showing symptoms of COVID-19 as identified by the school nurse when the student comes to school. These kits should only be used by the student. Again, these kits should only be used by the student. If families decide to use them for other people, please note that that is not legal because they were provided for the students, and also that there may not be any extras left, so they may not be able to get another one. We are in short supply, so again, kits should only be used by the student. How should they be used? The first test So every box comes with 2 tests. The first test should be done the evening the test is given to the student. So typically what happens if it's a close contact case, the student goes through school. At the end of the day, we give them the at-home test. They can go to their after school, and then they take the test at home. Again, take the test at home. This is not to be done at school, anywhere on the premises. 5 days after the first test is administered, students should take the second test. That's why it's really important that only the students use the test kits. There are certain exceptions to this rule. If the student is showing symptoms before day 5, they should take it sooner. If a student has been exposed to another student who tested positive before day 5, they should take the second test and then restart the 5-day cycle. So the students in this situation will receive another test kit. But again, we're seeing a rise in COVID cases, and sometimes students are exposed in multiple classes. So if that's the case, if they get the test kit and then 2 days later, another person in another class or in the same class is identified as being positive, the student should take the second test, and that will start their first day again, and then 5 days later from that, they will then retest, and we will provide another kit. So the protocol for submitting results for students who do test positive for COVID-19, the first thing is that they must quarantine for 10 days and then can return on the 11th day, provided they can pass the health screener. Again, usually that means they're not showing symptoms. It is 10 days, despite what other organizations and researchers are putting out. Again, the DOE rule is that the student must quarantine for 10 days and can return on the 11th day. A question I usually get is, well, what if they take a PCR test or another home test and it comes out negative? The answer, and that's before the 10 days, the answer is they cannot return. It must be on the 11th day. Once the determination has been made with the at-home test kit, the student must upload the results to the home test app and then send a screenshot. It looks like the picture on the right, to the CSS COVID response team. And I will put our emails again at the end of this presentation. But again, if the student tests positive after they go through the test, they must then follow the directions, which is actually found on the side of the box. There's this great QR code right there. They download the app, you can scan the QR code, upload the results, and then you'll get something like this picture on the right, and that is what you will send to the COVID response team. Please do not just do the test and then send us a picture of it. It needs to be processed and uploaded and sent in this manner. Please note that test results are personal and should be kept confidential. We highly recommend that students do not post to social media and are very careful about who they tell. Again, it is your prerogative. However, it is not something that should be taken lightly and just spread around. Please note that the school does have a protocol for notifying your classmates and people who you were in close contact with. So there is a protocol and we will take care of that. So there really is no need to spread your results around. It is important, however, that if you do test positive for COVID, that you should tell your parents and guardians. Please check in with your child, especially if you've received an email that lets you know that they were a close contact and that they should be taking the test. In this last section, I will be going through the protocol for students who are positive for COVID-19 and what they should do during quarantine. Students who test positive for COVID-19 will quarantine for 10 days. You may return on the 11th day provided you can pass the health screening. During that time, you should check Google Classroom for your classwork and obtain and submit work through there. It's also a good idea to be in touch with your teachers and even some of your classmates. You also will want to continuously check your email as many updates are coming through that portal. Lastly, you should attend office hours. Teachers will contact you if you are quarantined. Please note that the following scenarios I'm about to go through will not count for excused absences. Students who do pass the health screening but then choose not to attend are not permitted to the same accommodations discussed in the previous slide. Their absence is also unexcused. Again, if you pass the health screening, you are expected to be at school. Students who do not provide a medical clearance letter that they need longer than 10 days to recover will also not be privy to accommodations. Their absence is also unexcused. Students who are waiting for test results are permitted an excused absence to get the test, but not during the days that they are waiting for the results. Therefore, if they are able to pass the health screening while waiting for their test results, if they do decide to go to an outside provider, your absences will not be excused while waiting. And lastly, students who are exposed outside of CSS and are waiting for results are not excused, provided that they can pass the health screener. Again, these are the rules and regulations of the DOE, which CSS is bound to follow. Thank you for joining me in this crash course on the COVID response for CSS. If you have any further questions, feel free to contact me. My email is listed here on this slide, along with my colleagues who are on the COVID-19 response team. Again, if you test positive, please make sure you process your results and then send them to any individual on this list. Have a nice day, CSS. Bye.